difference between a Christian and a non-Christian in doing mercy? There are versions of it, there are forms of it, and oftentimes I see myself, people who are not Christian, doing amazing good work. So in what way is that different? And kind of relating back to that first question, how does that relate to our Christianity also?
I think the idea of actually the motivation behind what we do, I think, is everything. And we can do all kinds of things for performance for people, but the heart behind it, I think, is one of the differences between different people, and you won't really know the difference until you really dig in and talk to somebody. I do see I just came back from Haiti about a little over a week ago, and you see Sean Penn down there, is all over the news and CNN and doing things, and then I go to these camps that are run by Christians, and in some cases they look very similar. I had one guy, I'll just give this as a little story. There are about 20,000 people in this church-run camp, and they're the only camp in Haiti that has any written rules. They're the only camp that there's almost no violence. They actually develop their own police department. They have a tax that everybody pays. They get their garbage taken away and things like that. And so everyone comes to study them because they're so unique. And so the leader of the camp is talking to all these professionals that do this for a living and teach in university, and say, how can you do what you're doing? We've tried all these things that you're doing. And his simple response is, have you ever tried telling the people that you love them? And so that was a profound thought to these professionals that are doing something from a humanitarian point of view, but totally absent from the love of God that is involved in our life, that we suffer along with people because Jesus invested in our life.
I was just reading an article about the global elites, and these are folks who, the top tier of society in terms of wealth. And how do you really know that you arrived at the global elite class? Well, you have a foundation named after you. And they do good things. They do great things. They spend a whole lot of money doing all kinds of things around the world. But I think we can come back to what's the motivation. And I think for Christians, it is the fact that we have great resources. I think that we sometimes we don't utilize. I think we can tend to get caught up in the same things. Like we want to do something that's special. We want something that people will applaud. But I think that when we make use of the gospel, it really humbles us, and we become servants. We're changed by it, and I think that's what really drives Christian mercy. We don't need to look like that we're being righteous or we are doing something special. At least as it shouldn't. I know that Christians emulate that quite a lot as well, and they fall into that. But I think the gospel has a great resource for people who are serving. And I think another part is we don't really utilize the church. And I think church is one of the, I believe, one of the most effective ways that you can bring about social change. But I think a lot of times, a lot of these humanitarian causes are done by people who kind of, they care about it, and so it's very individualistic kind of ways of doing things. But I think it can be if the church really comes into its own and takes its calling from the Lord seriously, then I think it's got tremendous potential for collective action and for social change. So I think gospel and church.
This is a question that I do come back to a lot, and trying to just figure out what does it look like, because the reality is people that are working in human trafficking in the United States tend to not be Christians, most of them. And this summer I actually lived at a home, and it's not a Christian home, and it was a place for women who have come out of prostitution. And I think we do have to have a theology that can recognize things that are actually helpful in a real way, that they can actually pull people off the streets, or they can find jobs and do things that are practically very good and may even enable somebody to live a healthier lifestyle. But when it comes down to it, real change has to happen in the heart, and it has to be gospel change for an eternal purpose. And I think that's kind of where the clincher is for me. And I think we do have to be aware of ways to partner with non-Christians and ways that we can maybe use. I think there is some sense in which every person has a sense of justice and a sense of mercy, because we were created in God's image, and we pervert that truth and we use it selfishly, but it's still there. So we can use that image of God and understanding of mercy and justice, but really have to have a well-developed theology. And like he was saying, I would love to see the church really come into its own and actually be doing the things that we're called to do, because the reality is that non-Christians sometimes are doing a better job of some of the things that we should be doing.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I can add is the thing about Christian theology is that it gives us a grounding for taking care of the physical body. And I think without the perspective the eternal perspective that the Bible gives about your body, it's hard to do things like homeless ministry, working with people who are addicted to drugs, and giving them grounding for why your body is important. Because without an eternal perspective, why not just waste your body? Why not just destroy it? Because it will be destroyed anyway. But the physical resurrection of Christ, I think, gives us grounding and a reason to take care of our bodies and to do physical mercy that relates to the person holistically. And so I guess that's one thing to add. It's that's something that you can give them. That's something that they can stand on when it comes to Christian theology.